Welcome to another episode of the AppSec Insiders Podcast. This is a show where we discuss the hottest topics and latest trends in application and cloud security and tell you what you need to know. For those who don't know who we are all software developers, white hat hackers, and code security experts. And when we're not recording this podcast, we help organizations of all sizes with their cybersecurity needs. If you're an AppSec professional looking for an opportunity to work with some of the best in the industry, or you're a developer with an interest in cybersecurity, be sure to check out our careers page at forwardsecurity.com/careers. We would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to the show, and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and X at Forward Security. Links are in the show notes. And in today's episode, we will be discussing the Fortinet, FortiWeb, Fabric Connector, SQL injection to RCE. This is recorded as CVE 2025-25257 and has been massively impactful and all over the news. And I'm joined today with my two hosts, Iman and Farshad. Please say hi to the audience.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Before we get into today's discussion, a few housekeeping items. If you want to meet us in person, you can check out our events page. Otherwise, here are a few events that we will be at. Number one, the OWASP Vancouver meetup. The next one is Thursday, August 21st of 2025. There will be a special hands-on security workshop on Thursday, September 18th, 2025. We'll also be at Sector, now known as Black Hat Canada, and that's going to be September 30th through October 2nd in Toronto. There's also the Vancouver Cybersecurity Summit. That'll be Wednesday, October 20th, 2025. And of course, DEF CON 33. We're not sure if you're going to find us there yet, but I hope you go. Other things we need to discuss before we get into today's episode. Recently, we launched our Eureka DevSecops platform, which centrally orchestrates your scanners, correlates the results, and manages your application security threats and risks. Check it out on our website or the Azure Marketplace. Also, if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing and share with anyone who you think may enjoy listening. That would mean a lot to us.
Awesome.
All right. Who wants to kick it off? Aman, what do you have to say about the
start.
issue?
Yeah, today we want to take you on a journey through one of the most fascinating vulnerability discoveries of 2025. It's a pre-authentication SQL injection in Fortinet's FortiWeb. Nowadays, we don't believe that we see SQL injection these days, but still we see them. And it escalates all the way to an RCE, remote code execution. And this is CVE 2025-25-7. And it's a perfect case to study in how even enterprise security products with billions of dollars, they fail to even having this basic check for SQL injection actually, and they can fall victim to vulnerabilities like this actually. And first, let's set the stage. FortiWeb is Fortinet's web application firewall, and it's supposed to protect your web app from attacks like WAF. And the Fabric connector is a glue that allows FortiWeb to integrate with other Fortinet products like FortiGate Firewall and FortiManager. And think of it as a fancy middleman. It pulls security metadata from various sources and it feeds into FortiWeb so it can automatically adjust its protection based on real-time changes. And in
Can I
theory,
just ask a question? What was the CVSS score for this?
I should check that, but it was a 9 something, if I'm not wrong, actually.
Actually, there I see it. It's 9.6 to 9.8 out of 10. This is
It's
pretty crazy.
it's
This is
crazy.
really high. This actually just came out July 8th, so 9 days ago. And considering how many companies out there are using Fortinet product, this is actually pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly. And as I told, it's a major product and it acts as a glue. And the affected version is, I believe, FortiWeb version 7 and through 7.6.3. And the discovery process, the researchers at Watchtower Labs, they discovered this by doing what we do actually here at Forward Security. And they sometimes we do that. They do the patch diff, the bin diff, Fortinet patched like the product, and then they compared the patched code with the unpatched code, and then they found that there is a function called get fabric user by token that has been changed. And when they check the source code, not the source code, the binary actually, the reverse binary, they found that actually it's like it's a classic SQL injection, like something like select ID from fabric user dot user table where token equals the user input. And then by digging deeper, they found that to reach this vulnerable function, you need to hit one of these endpoints, like a slash API slash fabric slash device slash status, and the other one is at the end is a slash widget. And the vulnerability is triggered through authorization header, and it was simple. Like you could just type like authorization bearer and then your SQL payload. But the problem was that uh, you know because in the bearer token you cannot have any space. You can bypass this limitation using like different characters such as comments. Actually, in MySQL, if you put a slash star star slash, then you can comment something, and then they were able to bypass this, and they used like a slip function to confirm the vulnerability. And after confirmation of vulnerability, they tried to run the RCE. Actually, there is a function in MySQL which is into out file, and their goal was to drop a web shell on their CGI-bin folder, because this is like a C application. If you remember, in C application we had like CGI-bin folder, and anything executable in that folder, the attacker was able to execute that. But after a while, they find that they cannot do that because they cannot change. They are able to insert the file, but they were not able to kind of change the permission of the file. And because of that, and also the into out file, uh, you cannot overwrite any file, and you can only create a new file. And then they try to do another trick. They use like PTH files in Python and the side packages, and they were able to bypass this limit. After that, they were able to provide the payload, and they were able to run the Python code. And it seems like they only had like 127 bytes or 28 bytes to for the payload. And using that, it seems they were able to kind of run the shell, get the reverse shell actually. And but in general, it's crazy. What makes this fascinating isn't just the technical it is. It's that the fact that we are still seeing SQL injection in 2025 is not dead, and like big brands like Fortinet are vulnerable to this one.
It's
I
crazy.
also I
Oh, sorry.
wanted to,
Go ahead. Go
you know,
ahead.
you go.
We're too polite. We're too polite Canadians. You go ahead.
So I wanted to add a couple interesting points to this. So not only were they not sanitizing this SQL input, but also the MySQL database service was running as root. So when they
Wow.
wrote when they used the into file function or out to file function, um, it can write anywhere, and the resultant file is a root file. So if you write a script, that script will also
That
have root level privileges. But
Wow.
I did want to add one mitigating factor. Okay, so in order to reach this API, so the way that the FortiWeb service works is it's a web application firewall. It passively sits in between the browser and the server, and it you can't really talk directly to it. Maybe if there was a vulnerability in it, in the way that it looks at HTTP traffic, you might be able to, but there's no official way externally to be able to manage it externally. And the same is true for Fabric. Fabric is another Fortinet service that connects, like Iman was saying, connects FortiWeb with other Fortinet services you might be running internally. So the official documentation for Fortinet says that you're not supposed to expose the basically the admin API. So you are able to manage FortiWeb and Fabric and the other Fortinet services by going to dashboards or by just talking to their REST API, but those are not usually exposed to the public. The documentation explicitly says that you should only expose it to a private network. So maybe from on-prem, or if you have if you're VPN'd into the same virtual network, then maybe you can reach those endpoints. But some research on Shodan showed that there are at least 5,000. I don't know how much higher that number goes, but what I saw was at least 5,000 um, web servers that are exposing this vulnerable endpoint.
Jared, I found something as well on top to add to that. There's a slash API slash fabric slash device status. Is an
Mhm.
endpoint you can check the status of the most for the web apps expose that. And then because you can use that API to find out what the status of the device is.
Right.
And apparently, according to SOC Radar and Watchtower, about 20,000 devices are publicly reachable through that
20.
slash status. And
Yeah.
then, basically, like we were saying earlier, if the vulnerability exists because it improperly handles the bearer tokens in the authorization header, and you don't even need credentials. You can just put the stuff there, and it'll fetch it from there. And Bob's your uncle. And then no user interaction is required. They just send a crafted HTTP request via curl or whatever they want to exploit that,
Yeah.
and they go from there. So yeah, it's
That's right.
crazy.
That's right. Yeah, the slash status include so in the documentation I saw, it said that the slash status is also supposed to be only reachable with a VPN.
Yeah,
Like
this
that's what
is this,
Fortinet recommends, but
yeah.
maybe it's not default. Maybe you have to do that manually, or
It,
maybe websites or web services are they're deciding that they want that status open.
Yeah, it's sort of this is like I'm having flashbacks of like 20 years ago because if we go back to network devices back in the day, and even to this date, a lot of devices will have ping enabled on external interfaces. Like
Mhm.
let's talk about like all those different things like ping and trace route. Like why are those there? All the ICMP protocols, they're there for you to troubleshoot your network, right? So back 20, 30 years ago, we would use those, and people still do, to figure out, hey, what's the status of my devices? Is it still up and whatnot, right?
Mhm.
But then it became common practice to block them from the outside because you don't want the outsiders to use those things to get status of your network and map your network. So it's now similar things like endpoints like this, where they give you a status that should only be available to people that are trying to connect this, to management network, to people that are managing that network rather than the general
Mhm.
public. So it's kind of like we keep seeing these trends, right? Like something that used to happen, like let's take IoT for a second, right? Like all the problems we see in IoT are basic web application. A lot of the devices don't have, they have default admin passwords. All the things we saw 20 years ago for web applications are repeating themselves in IoT. And it sounds like some of the network management things are also coming up here with in this regard. So yeah, very interesting.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting because, you're talking about the IoT. These devices, they're not like because the attackers usually they go for bug bounties such as HackerOne or like enterprise clients, banks, and but no one is paying attention to those IoT devices or these routers or firewalls or this is interesting and the fact that we were not able to find this vulnerability till 2025. It's very interesting actually.
And it's really scary too. I'm reading here, it says as of mid-July, they're working POCs on GitHub, exploit DBs, threat actor forums,
Wow.
anyone to exploit these things. And Fortinet, like I was saying, is one of the more widely used products out there. So yeah, this is pretty scary.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there are other RCEs that we have seen recently also, like the one that was related to Laravel. Do we want to talk about that too, or we just want to talk about that in next
I
episode?
guess we could save that for the next episode. I think we're coming up to time, but yeah, this has been a fantastic discussion.
Awesome, awesome. Is there any lesson learned?
There's always lessons learned, isn't there? I mean, I guess from my perspective, one thing is don't expose anything that is used for managing your devices to the outside world. It should all be inside in a VPN and ideally on a management network, right? Again, going back to network security practices, when you wanted to manage your devices, you would put them in a special subnet, which was your management network that was only accessible by the people that needed to manage those devices. Not on the internet, absolutely not, and not in your internal network either, because your internal network might be fairly large, and you don't want the general staff to be able to access those management ports or the functions of those devices. So
And
that's one reminder for the audience from me.
SQL injection is very easy to cache using SAST. Actually, it's a very easy cache to vulnerability using SAST. One of the main recommendation is always have a SAST in your pipeline, and statistical analyzers, and because in the end, maybe the problem with SaaS is that you will always have alert fatigue because they find a lot of false positives. But for the SQL injection related stuff, I would prefer to see the false positive and resolve them rather than like seeing a real SQL injection in place, actually, the true positive actually.
Mhm.
And yeah, as Fasha told, we should always, we should never expose these endpoints to public. It's crazy actually. And the fact that Farshad sent a message that there are 20,000 devices that are publicly reachable, and since they're vulnerable, it's crazy actually. And yeah, Jared, is there any lesson learned? Or?
I think you covered it all. Make sure you're doing SAST, and if you're gonna use a WAF, maybe I'm sure that they're doing the best that they can at Fortinet, but I would definitely look at reviews and decide which vendor you want to go with, based on history and maturity and that kind of a thing.
Oh,
Um, the right tool for the right job.
awesome,
Yeah.
awesome,
So that's it for our show today. Please
awesome.
subscribe wherever you listen to the show, and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and X at Forward Security. The links are in the show notes. Also,
Thank
if you have any
you.
suggestions for topics you'd like to discuss on a future episode, you can get in contact with us via email, LinkedIn, or even tag us on X. Also, as a reminder, catch us at the events we mentioned before. Let me go quick through them. OWASP Vancouver meetup, Sector, and the Vancouver Cybersecurity Summit. And lastly, if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing and share with anyone who you think may enjoy listening. That would mean a lot to us. This has been the AppSec Insiders podcast. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone. Merci.